according to the cloud. Brilliant. Hello. I'm going to introduce myself. Kholoud will introduce herself. We will frame exactly what we're doing in this conversation. And then we're going to invite everyone to introduce themselves. And then we're going to have a great conversation about producing work in this interstitial time, in these interstitial places. So my name is Claudia Alick. My gender pronouns are they, their, she, hers. I'm just going to request, if it's possible, put yourself on mute. If you can put yourself on mute, and I'm going to go to gallery view so I can put folks on mute if I need to, but I trust y'all to mute yourselves. All right. So Claudia Alick, gender pronouns they, their, she, hers. I don't know if you noticed, but I was able to right click on my little label on my name and like actually hit rename and add my gender pronoun. So if you want to try that, feel free. It's a fun little Zoom trick you could do. I am located currently in the Bay Area. This is the land of the Ohlone people. I like to, if I can, when I'm doing these sort of larger conversations, do a land acknowledgement. So I'm doing a land acknowledgement for my space. I invite you to, and I'll also do an access check-in. So I invite you to do one of those as well, just to let folks know if there's anything they need to know to help make this conversation more accessible for them. The only thing I should let you know is I have a muscle disorder, so every once in a while it's gonna look like I'm looking off in the corner or I'm pulling a face at someone, but I'm never pulling a face at anything anyone's saying. It's just a muscle spasm. Other than that, all of my access needs are met. I'm going to hand the microphone over to my co-organizer to introduce themselves.
Hello, I am Kholoud Sawaf. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am in Fayetteville, Arkansas right now, and my access needs are met.
Excellent. So, framing. What are we doing here? What is this conversation about? And then we're going to go around and do introductions of everyone. So this conversation is a conversation about producing work in the digital space, but it's not just about creating digital work. This is about transferring work that is created for a physically embodied exchange and finding ways to transfer it to places where that exchange is happening through a digital interface. So I feel like the conversation we're having is a different conversation than I would be having with filmmakers or with folks who are creating YouTube channels. We're actually trying to get at some things that are a little bit different. So I'm going to invite folks to introduce themselves. We're going to do a quick and dirty introduction. So just name. This is my location of where I'm coming from. This is the land on which I am. If you're going to do a land acknowledgement, access check-in, quick and dirty so we can hear from everyone. Then we're going to go back around and invite people to tell longer stories about what they have already done in terms of this transmedia, digital producing, whatever we want to call it. I'm going to be facilitating. I would love it if we could have notes. Would you be kind enough to start a like a Google Notes thing and then put a link in here so we could all see it? Thank you, my partner. All right, and of course, as always, it's complicated to try and manage a conversation when we're doing it this way. So I'm going to call on someone, and then I'm going to invite you to call on someone, and hopefully that'll be the mechanism we use to call on everyone for this first round. We'll practice, we'll see how it works. All right, so I'm going to call on the first box that I have. I hit the speaker, I have it on speaker view, so that when I'm recording this, folks are coming up. But you can also hit gallery view so you can see all of the faces. I'm gonna call on Sabrina Hamilton. Sabrina, please introduce yourself. Tell us where you are physically and what your company is.
I am Sabrina Hamilton, talking to you from Belchertown, Massachusetts, where I run the Co-Festival of Performance, and this is Pecumtuck land, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I'm going to pass it on to my USITT buddy, Ian.
Hi, I'm Ian Garrett. I am in Toronto. Land acknowledgement is Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, the Métis, and the Mississauga of the New Credit. And I run a mixed reality performance company that we've been doing a 2-year research project, I'll talk about more later, called Toaster Lab, and I teach at York University Ecological Design for Performance. And I'm gonna continue to go down the grid I have here to Mike Drach.
Hi there, Mike Drach here. I'm living in the city of Toronto, traditional territory of Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. He, his, him are my pronouns. And yeah, I've worked in mostly kids media and transmedia for kids and families as a writer, development person, and sometime producer. And
So what is our etiquette for when someone gets frozen?
for media. Oh.
You froze. Please keep talking, though. I think our etiquette's going to be just keep going until someone else says we can't hear you. But please continue.
Where did I get cut off? Sorry.
Children, working with children.
Oh yeah, kids media for TV, film, and interactive here in Toronto, and I also taught at a local college to teach project development for kids media. Yes, sorry, can I now call on Jocelyn Prince?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Jocelyn, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm in Chicago, which is part of the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, the Ojibwe, and the Potawatomi nations. I'm a lecturer at Northwestern University. I teach theater and performance studies. I also do freelance consulting and producing in the industry. There's a storytelling event that I was supposed to produce that is sort of not happening in person. So I'm interested to maybe get some ideas on if that's something that we could do digitally. And I have to call on someone. Hold on. I will call on Alexandra Meda.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Meda. I'm here in East Los Angeles on the land of the Gabrielino, the Chumash, and the Tonga. My activist needs are being met, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I work with Teatro Luna and Teatro Luna West, which is a social justice-based Latinx all women of color theater company that is based in ensemble devised practice. And in 2014, we wanted to figure out how far we could expand the idea of ensemble through digital and technology, and how we could exist in ensemble outside of one room, truly building work across borders. And so we opened up our first regional outpost here in LA. We were founded in Chicago in 2000. And we've been working on that experiment ever since. And lots of learnings, and it's interesting to be in this crazy moment after all of that. I'm gonna pass it to Tara Vandergaal.
Hey everybody. So I'm here in Chestnut Ridge, New York, which is on the land of the Ramapo Lenape people. And I am a theater professor at Ramapo College of New Jersey, which is a public New Jersey state school. And I'm in the process of trying to figure out how to do my courses online. And also I'm kind of excited about, because of thinking about these courses, how to produce a you know, a made for this space assignment slash potential show with my classes and with some of my students, so that they would be writing things specifically to do on Facebook or Zoom or these kinds of things. So nice to see you all. She, her, hers, and my access needs are met. Thank you. And I will pass to Teresa Thuman.
Hello, my name is Teresa Thuman, and I am pronouns are she, her. I am located in what's known as Seattle, and the ancestral land of the Duwamish people, and the tribal sovereign recognition of the Mukilteo, the Tulalip, and the Snoqualmie, and the Squamish. I am the producing artistic director of Sound Theater Company, which is also another social justice based theater company. We do work in a number of different communities, bringing them front and center, making work for, by and about marginalized, historically marginalized communities. We, I'm here because I'm very interested in Claudia's work, and I'm very interested in access and disability. We've been focusing a lot on deaf and disabled, as well as people of color and Indigenous work. And in terms of my access needs, I'll probably turn off my video because I have a spinal issue with my chair, and I'll probably put my zero gravity chair back, and it might be a little awkward. So that's my only access issue. Other than that, I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I think that there's a lot to be discovered in terms of this transmedia approach to support live performance and people who can't actually be in live performance. So the flexibility it offers for people to be able to experience who can't actually be in a performance space, we are in a whole new territory, and it's actually very exciting, I think. Next, gee, power. Debbie Kajiyama?
Okay. Hi there. Sorry, I joined a little bit late, so I guess we're doing introductions. My name is Debbie Kajiyama. My pronouns are she, they. My access needs are met, and I'm calling in from the San Francisco Bay Area, the ancestral lands of the Ohlone people. I'm very interested because I saw Claudia's presentation on HowlRound, and just looking forward to get some exchange ideas. I co-direct a small dance theater company in the San Francisco Bay Area that does a lot of work collaborating with communities, particularly now Latina immigrants, undocumented folks. Thank you. And I don't know who hasn't been passed to yet. Tara.
But I'm here. Rulan is here. I can't see anyone else's name, but I'm.
Hey, Rulan. How about if I pass to you?
Hi, this is Rulan, and my name is Rulan Tangen, pronouns she, hers. I'm in Ogapoge, which is also known as Santa Fe. It's unceded occupied territories of the Tewa peoples. My access needs are, I cannot hear very well. I've tried calling in 3 different numbers, so I can't hear too well, unfortunately. My role in the world is as Artistic Director of Dancing Earth, which is an Indigenous contemporary dance company. I'm very excited for us to, we've been really building intertribal and international Indigenous relations and intercultural, and I recognize that this platform provides even more capacity for that. I'm also very excited to be a part of something where the differently abled community will likely be at the lead, because I think any folks who have been at the margins tend to be carrying incredible knowledge. I know that definitely from Indigenous perspective. And my reason to be here is because Claudia asked, and she's amazing, and I'm so excited to hear so many amazing people that I either know or don't know here on this call. So thank you for the invitation. And I don't know who to pass it on to because I can't see anything and I can barely hear. So I'll just pass it into the ethers.
Let's pass it randomly to, I'm just going to say Best Park. How about Best Park? Has Best Park spoken?
Hi, how are ya? Hey, I just got on the call, guys. I was on another Zoom call, and so I just got on here. I'm just super excited, Claudia and everyone, that you've gotten this thing up and going. I just had a board meeting with my board of directors. I run a theater and dance company in South Carolina, and we were just like having these major conversations and coming up with brainstorming ways to ignite our casts and ignite our students. And you know, so I don't know what the question was. So I'm just telling you who I am and what I'm excited about this, and more later. I'm looking forward to hear it. Passing it on to someone, I don't know who, right? Who hasn't spoken?
Has Shoshana spoken? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name.
That's okay. Hi, I'm Shoshana. I am the unceded land of the Pennacock, Wabanaki people in Vermont, and I am co-artistic director of Sandglass Theater. We are terrifically analog, and I hope we all don't get too used to being in a digital space. I hope we remain rooted in actually inhabiting space together. And, but that being said, yeah, we need to figure out our survival in this time. So thank you for putting this together, Claudia. And my access needs are met. Oh, right. I'm sorry. I don't know who hasn't gone yet. Margaret.
Just pick someone. Margaret.
Hi, I'm Margaret. I'm in Davis, California. And I teach at UC Davis. And really, you know, I know I love the theater. I love the quality of being with everyone, but I also see this is a really amazing opportunity, particularly for our group of students. I purposely cast 17 women from 17 different cultures speaking at least six different languages in a production of Antigone before we left.
Oh.
And I was sad but secretly happy when most of the cast has been emailing me saying that they have to go home. And I'm doing the whole production digitally, from the table read to the performance. I've done a little bit of performance work where I have asked the people who see the work to send me video of what they witnessed, and then I've taken that and turned it into another type of performance. So I intend to do the same thing with Antigone, and I'm really I feel like the global element of this idea of the global aloneness, the global dealing with grief will be able to be explored at a whole nother level through this. It's different, yeah, really different, but it's a different story. And I think that for me, the key is what I've been thinking about is, what is it? It's not the same. It is different. Even with the classes I'm teaching, I'm not teaching the class I intended to teach. It's a different class. So that's me. I'm super excited. Thank you for doing this. I'm like really excited. I was late because I can't find my charger. Okay, that's it. Let's see, did Sabrina already speak? Ian? You spoke? Tara, did you speak? Let's see.
Maybe Alyssa Ginsburg?
Okay, great.
Great. Hi. I was just going to jump in anyways. Perfect timing. Hi, my name is Alyssa. I'm in Toronto, originally from Chicago, Toronto. We mentioned most of the original territories, but this is known as the Dish with One Spoon territory, primarily the Anishinaabe people. So I am an organizer of poetry slams and spoken word events. We recently started having the Toronto Poetry Slam online. We just had our second one last night. Thank you, Claudia, for inviting me. Access needs are met, pronouns she, her, and I will pass it off to my colleague at the Poetry Slam, Tanya Neumeyer.
Hello, good afternoon. Tanya Neumeyer, they, them, theirs. Grateful to be here on the same traditional territory. The wampum belt covenant between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe is called the Dish with One Spoon treaty. So we had the second slam last night. I'm doing also poetry beyond poetry organizing. I'm a poet and I know it and I like to show it. I wrote a Medium article talking about how we moved our poetry slam online. I guess I can put that link in the chat if anyone wants to read that, thinking it may be relevant across art forms. Thanks, Claudia. My access needs are met when I mute my video and move around for arthritis, so thanks. I'm gonna call on Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Grossman, she, her pronouns. I'm calling in from Washington, D.C. On the ancestral homelands of the Piscataway, near the ancestral homelands of the Nagachatunk. I'm a director and devised theater artist, collaborative playwright, performer, a co-founder of Dog and Pony DC, and way back, I don't know, in like 2012, we started working with incorporating digital and social media into our live events as part of our audience integration methodology. And so we had shows where people were tweeting with like 12 characters during the show and texting and live calling into performances. And so now I'm finding myself working with, and I have two colleagues here on this platform, a production at the University of Maryland of Queen Nguyen's She Kills Monsters, and the department has invited us to, instead of canceling the production, to envision how to transition it into a digital platform. So we're exploring how to create what I'm calling a site-specific audience integrated work on the internet, as opposed to doing like a filmed live live reading or something, staged reading. So we're just here to share ideas we've had in the past week and also hear those ideas from y'all. I'm gonna just turn to one of my colleagues, who's Kiana, and have her go.
Hi there. As Rachel said, I'm Kiana, pronouns she, her. I am a graduating third year MFA student at the University of Maryland. Excitingly trying to figure out the end of the semester and how to move a costume design course to digital media and things like that. So intrigued to hear what people have to say about moving also not just productions, but student work and things like that to the platform. As Rachel said, we're working on a production of She Kills Monsters. It's an exciting and interesting switch of gears that we are all going through right now in figuring out how to transition that, particularly from a costume perspective for me. I am on the ancestral homelands of the Piscataway people as well in Gaithersburg, Maryland at the moment. And my access needs are being met. So I will be muting myself and shutting my video as well. So thank you. Oh, and I'm going to pass it to our other colleague, Taylor Verrett.
Hi, I'm Taylor Verrett. I'm a first year MFA candidate at UMD in projection design. I was the projection designer for She Kills Monsters, and now I I don't really know what my new role is, but I'm really excited to find this balance of digital and theater and how this whole situation could potentially make theater more accessible for a lot of people, being from Louisiana myself, where I don't really have access to a lot of shows and productions, and my whole family's back there. So the idea that the show I'm working on, that they could potentially watch it and see it, and that this is something that could be carried on to bring theater to people in areas that don't really have theater. So I'm very excited for this whole situation. I am currently in Tacoma Park, Maryland, also on the land of the Piscataway people. Oh, and my pronouns are she, hers, and like Kiana, I will be muting and turning off my video, but I am listening to every word. And I will call on Amanda Console.
Hi, it's Console. And amazing to find a bunch of University of Maryland people here. I teach at the University of Maryland over in the music school. We had our opera get canceled and shut down. We're supposed to start tech today. So I'm here to kind of figure out what that's going to be. We're not necessarily making a full scale online production. I can't wait to hear what you guys are doing with She Kills Monsters. I was excited to see that. But we're sort of asking the question, what can we do? Because we've got a lot of second year grads who this was sort of their culminating experience. So Amanda Console, she, her, they, them, take your pick. And I think that was everything. Access needs are met. So who haven't we heard from? Chase?
Erin keeps raising her hand also every time we say.
Let's go to Erin.
I'm here, and I'll call on Chase afterwards. Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Hi, Claudia. I'm so excited about this. So I use all singular pronouns, she, he, and etc. My access needs are being met. I am on unceded Ohlone Chochenyo land in the East Bay of the Bay Area. I am the director-producer. I'm a freelance director and producer, most recently working on the Women's Theater Festival here, and a giant event that was supposed to happen in 2 weeks that we are just postponing. I am excited to be here because I want to use this time to advance our field and find ways to use digital media to, sorry, did I miss something? Use digital media in a way that makes sense, like not trying to bow to digital media, but finding out what the most useful interfaces are of digital and live work. And I also really want to use this time to get the public invested in the idea that they need artists and that artists need to be paid for their work. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to Chase then. Did I see that Chase is available?
Chase is his microphone.
Okay.
Chase's microphone and camera are not working, but Chase says, I am Chase Molden. I am the technical director for Shepherd University in West Virginia, as well as the prop supervisor for the Contemporary American Theater Festival. Gender pronouns, he, him. The process is working. I'm so excited that this actual relabeling thing worked, because that's a new practice for me today. Yeah. And apologies from Kiana if they jump in and out. The internet isn't the best. Yes. So we're acknowledging just at the top of this that we have various capabilities in terms of bandwidth and connectivity. So we're just sort of leaning into the imperfectness of this space, and we're not expecting perfection, which is why I said, oh, right, if you suddenly freeze, just keep talking and assume that we can hear you until we go, we can't hear you. Again, lessons learned from this practice. Have we gotten everyone? I feel like we might have missed a couple of introductions. So have we heard from everyone? And if we haven't, could you just unmute yourself and just go? Jump on. All right, Yvonne, yes, please, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yvonne E. Debris, she, her, hers. I am currently in Brooklyn, New York, land of the Lenape. All of my access needs are met. I am the artistic director and host of the Parsnip Ship, which is a radio podcast where we record plays in front of a live audience in Brooklyn. And then we put it on wherever you can stream your podcasts. So this is a really interesting time for us because we've gotten a lot of renewed interest in the last 2 weeks as people are wanting to feel like they are gathering. And so my podcast, we record the audience. It's just literally a live podcast of converting plays into radio plays. So we're leaning more into that digital sphere. So I'm really interested to hear how people are transforming what should have been their live performances physically into the digital space, because we definitely know we're recording for audio and that experience, and that's what we've been using. So I'm interested in hearing what other people are interested in doing and seeing if there's any room for collaboration or to offer myself up as a potential resource if any of y'all are into podcasting. And I'm gonna pass it off to Al Parker, who is my artistic associate at the Parsnipship, to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Al Parker, she, hers. Like Yvonne said, I work with the Parsnipship on the artistic team. It's an interesting process, the two of us. I am also in Brooklyn, ancestral home of the Lenape people, and all my access needs are being met. And like Yvonne, we've been putting our heads together a lot, just the hours upon hours of phone calls and video calls and texting and the Slack messages to be thinking of ways to adapt what we already have as a partially digital artistic podcast company. And looking at new ways to keep engagement, especially with current live digital programming. So also really interested in hearing how other formats that rely so heavily on physical presence in a space together, y'all are translating into that live digital experience. Is anyone else not gone?
Hi, my name is Jen Onopa, and I'm in Western Mass in the Nipmuc and Pocumtuck territories, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a public school teacher at a performing arts focused public school, teaching 7 through 12, and I'm working on doing some online devising with a bunch of middle schoolers who are super excited to keep our project going, and I'm really looking forward to hearing folks' ideas. Thank you so much.
All right, have we heard from everyone? Brilliant, my colleagues, yay, and in 30 minutes, well done, colleagues. So I am going to be doing a little bit of facilitation. Again, just being super transparent, facilitating in a digital space is different than in a physical space, so there might be some transparent, can we hear you, who goes next shenanigans going on, but I'm going to pass the mic to Rulan, and invite them to share a bit about their dance practice and what they have been doing. I'm gonna ask folks if it's possible, because we have way more folks than I anticipated joining us, which is just the best. This is such amazing and useful representation across geographies and across practices. I'm gonna request that we try to keep our talking about what we're doing as an example to others to like that, 5-minute footprint. So I'm gonna do a little timing, and I'm gonna ask my partner if it's possible to get that Google Notes document open so we can all be dropping our links into things as well, and invite you all, if you have a link to something that you want to invite other people to, we can drop it in that document so everyone can have access. But Rulan, let me give you the microphone. I'm gonna mute myself.
Thank you so much. So I think it took us 48 hours to make the transition. We had never done anything online before, but the dancers were literally hungry. So we were thinking, okay, our communities are hungry too for uplift and literally movement and connection. which is what we do. So we were making our classes available. We tested a lot of things. We could have, the first place we had been directed to was Zoom, which we're doing now. And we've launched that to make creative practices available to our community. And we're looking at creating online performances. Ian has been a collaborator in the past. So hi, Ian, over there. I think what I'm finding of interest is our work as Indigenous people have been very place-based. So working with our community members where we land, reaching out to Native community there, and also being ourselves a web of intertribal and global Indigenous relations, as far as who we are facilitating these relationships. And now we're able to potentially have our Maori friends in New Zealand in the cyber world at the same time as our Kauai friends in Southern California. So and we had just completed a live dance performance in January, the end of January, that was about the apocalypse and Indigenous people running from the apocalypse. And then the script itself, it sort of came out of us. We're not exactly sure where it came from, but during the process, we kept repeating the lines that were spoken, and we're like, they kept coming up in our lives. And we were also told that I got a message about the dance production needing to reflect a prophecy. So I got back in touch with all of my Native grandmother elders, like, is there a prophecy that you're wanting us to transmit at this time through bodies? And they kept saying, I think you've already got the prophecy. And I couldn't imagine that they were actually talking about the script we had. And now I'm seeing the exact pattern of the show playing out in real life, which means that the solutions were built into our bodies and into the words that sort of came to us. So we're sort of peeling those away. One of the, this is just a little hint for you guys. One of the things that we did was we enacted a poem that was written. We thought we'd be writing poems to, the water and the rocks and the trees, but somehow we were writing a poem, like we pulled it out of the bag and like, oh, it's a rubber ball, so let's write a poem to that. And one of the things that was said was, when you push us down, we bounce back. So I'll just close with that. When we get pushed down by these circumstances, we're here to bounce back together. So reaching out my arms to connect with all of you. And thank you, Claudia, for giving me this moment to speak.
Thank you so much for sharing your process and your practice and also your challenges. They're all incredibly useful for this moment of extreme transformation. And I didn't name exactly what we're doing. This practice right here is what I've named it for myself, and I was doing this before all of this happened. This is a peer learning international digital process exchange, because you're all experts and we're all learning from each other and exchanging our practices over the interwebs. I love it. I'm such a dork. Alyssa, I'm wondering if perhaps Toronto Poetry Slam or somebody from Toronto might want to, and I might be mixing up names of people connected to events. I apologize.
You got that right. Yeah. So I'll do, Tanya, I'll probably tap you in to talk to. I hope that's okay. Or maybe Tanya, you want to unmute yourself? We can kind of do this together. Sure. So the Toronto Poetry Slam has been around for 15 years. We're twice monthly. We've been at the same venue for like at least 10 years. And we have a slam season, and our final show was in February. And for the last several years, we've been selling out like a 650 seat venue for our finals. And normally we have somewhere between 100 and 160 or 70 people that come out to our twice monthly events. So March 14th was set to be our season opener, and also the first show without the artistic director who just retired. So this is like a really fascinating and stressful period. But we've been managing, we were ready. We've got our features ready to go and all this stuff. And when these decisions were coming down on March 14th, we didn't have to be at home. We were permitted to have events of, you know, under 250. So as a collective, we decided on the Friday night that we were going to cancel for the Saturday show. And I don't think we've ever canceled a show before. And so obviously that's pretty stressful. I'm sure all of us have been going through this. Yeah, so we decided to cancel. We told our feature that we would pay him and that we would just have him perform at a future date. That was, you know, we didn't want artists to lose out on money that they were expecting. But then, yeah, and so Tanya was kind of like, well, I wonder if we could do it online. And, you know, it was also like, but this is a live event and I don't think it would translate well to the digital realm, right? But then Tanya at like noon the next day was like, I'm going to propose this to the team. So Tanya, do you mind jumping in to discuss?
Yeah, so we started discussing the idea maybe at noon once the team reviewed the proposal of how I would use Zoom to host the poetry slam. We opened through our DMs on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Claudia, feel free to redirect us at any point. Obviously, it's so fresh. There's still a lot of granular detail for us in it, but we had within an hour, 45 minutes, our set of 12 poets willing to perform. We had to close the sign up for the slam. I held a test your mic and answer any questions pre-show huddle at 7:30. We started the show on time when we usually started at 8:05. And it went a little bit longer than I expected. We did 12 poets in the first round, a 7-minute bio break, 2 feature poems from our feature poet who was scheduled to perform in person, and then the second round of 6 poets, mailed out prizes to the third and second place people, and each transferred $80 that night to the winner, who called themselves the Quarantine Slam winner, which it was really the Toronto Poetry Slam online, but they were saying, yeah, Quarantine Slam is my gender.
This prize for those of you who need
another person wanted to mail out toilet paper rolls to the top 3 winners. I think the motivation for doing it was to try to provoke people to think about accessing the arts at this time of uncertainty and crisis, and to build pathways. We have a wheelchair inaccessible venue. There must be 40 stairs to get to the basement, 20 stairs. Feels like 40 to me some days with my ankles. So it's something I'd like to see going forward, weaving in an online access. We've been doing live tweets and Instagram coverage for years, and that's something our audience really loves, helps for retention. But until we have a fully accessible venue, I'd like to see this continuing. So it was, deliberate that we pushed ourselves to have this happen early on, and then intentional that I wrote about it, what worked and what didn't, and what we'll keep thinking about. And our iteration of it last night, we had someone join in the middle and just start talking over everyone who, because a lot of people from across Canada and parts of the US, from Rockwood, Illinois, Vancouver, BC, are very familiar with the art form. I think it was fairly intuitive for a lot of us to engage as audience members and to participate and to have the judges judge the poem in the chat, and then for me to announce it and us to move on to the next poet. But last night the interruption was like, oh, how do we handle that? And so we've been learning as we go forward. Thanks for being here. Looking forward to hearing more stories.
If I may add, I think that one of the things about slam in general, like poetry slam and spoken word, is that like the poetry slam usually only retains people, people will say for like 2 years, and then they tend to move on to something else, because as a slammer it can be very stressful. But so we constantly have like a revolving door of people. There are a lot of people who have been coming around for a long time. Mike is one of the poets who's been coming for years, but there's constantly like this refreshing. So it's very important to like not stop our show. And given that this is a very uncertain time, like it's pretty amazing that it's been able to translate. Thank goodness Tanya was like, this is how we could do it. But also we've had a lot of people, they don't age out, but they do other things. They have kids and more full-time jobs and don't have the ability to come out, for a 3-hour show on a weekend or whatever. So like this is also giving them the ability to tap in as well to our shows, and that's like really special. Like we had somebody who we have had people from across the country. Somebody even joined from Poland last weekend and Australia yesterday. So like it's great to be able to keep the community together and also like recognize that there's a global community and a global interest. And now like there's multiple other poetry slams that are going, at least in Canada and maybe in the US, that are going to be doing this online. I don't think that most people have been trying it, but this was our first and it was a success. So thank you all for listening, and I look forward to hearing about what else you've all been up to.
Right. I guess if I had a footnote, I would say that Poetry Slam is designed to be interactive and not just for the poets. So it's my urging to all of you is if we can figure it out, anyone can. Yeah.
I'm going to share a quick story. Is there anyone here from the Dayton Poetry Slam on this awesome large conversation? All right, so I will share my experience of visiting their open mic poetry slam super fast. I'm going to pass the mic to Alex to talk a little bit about their collaboration with Audible Theater. The Dayton Poetry Slam, based in Ohio, they already had a Discord, which is an online space for sort of I go there to have really deep cut nerdy conversations about like the streaming D&D show that I like to watch and a couple of the sci-fi TV shows that I enjoy watching. It has a voice share feature. So everyone goes to their Discord channel on the Discord server, and you go into the voice channel, and then everyone participated that way and then posted GIFs, like reaction GIFs, because it would have been chaos if everyone had unmuted themselves to give cheers. And so we would post either reaction GIFs of people clapping. I've never seen so many different GIFs of people clapping, or just like text being like, oh, this is awesome, giving affirmation. And that's how they managed that space. One of the things I wanted to shout out also for the Toronto Slam, they had an organizational layer where you went to the Facebook event, you read the directions, you emailed to get on the list, and then there was like a little sound check moment in the Zoom, so that there were like moments to like help us to all feel like we're actually participating. Dayton Poetry Slam was a little messier, and it was all done in the first 30 minutes. So it was, again, kind of equivalent to you show up at the slam and the lights are still kind of on and folks are still setting up tables. It was that kind of vibe, but in a digital space where folks were testing out mics, being like, can you hear me? That kind of deal. All right, I'm going to pass the microphone to Alex to speak a little bit about their collaboration with Audible Theater.
Hello, everybody. Again, this is Alex. So just a little bit of context. I think I shared we're a devised theater company, Latinx, all women of color, and we're particularly known for our large-scale devised projects. They take about 2 years to build, and we historically were building them with whatever ensemble was in place in Chicago. And in 2012, we wanted to really challenge that notion of how to use the technology we had to expand that, to allow other people entry points, particularly those who felt they didn't have an ensemble that focused on those social justice issues or were for women. So we've been on a journey since then to figure out how to do that. Part of our practice every few years has been to put on a solo performance festival featuring women of color. And they were full theatrical productions put together. We've done it in multiple ways. Some had full runs, some were all in one night, many experiments. In 2014, we launched what we called our Talking While Female solo performance festival. And the idea was over the next few years, we would have in multiple cities at the same time, solo festivals with producers coming in to try to book those women, right? One of the things we hear often is, where are they? We would book them if we knew where they were. So we thought we could answer some of that through that process. That was all leading up to our 20th anniversary this year. In 2018, after a few years with our regional ensemble in Los Angeles, we finally got a space. And to open up that space, we were like, wow, let's take this idea of the solo festival and how do we translate it into a nightly event so we can feature even more people. And so it became a live storytelling session. And we did several of those a couple of times a month in the year of 2018. And they went so well, these live experiences that would feature 4 to 6 writers, telling their own story, all based around a theme that we would assign for the night. But we wanted to serve even more people, and we could only fit 60 people in our space. And so we ended up pitching a project to Audible. So we did not actually go through Audible Theater. At the time when we sent a pitch to do these 25 solo pieces, solo plays on a single audio book, it would be an Audible original. It was the same time that they were starting to launch Audible Latino. And so our proposal was accepted, and but the caveat was, our proposal wasn't accepted until the beginning of January 2019, and they wanted it completed by the end of February. We're like, that's impossible. But somehow we were able to figure this all out by March. And so it ended up being 25 artists from around the world, predominantly based in the US, but some from other countries. But we didn't just want to record the stories as stories. We really wanted to approach it from a very theatrical perspective. Our work is really about trying to push form in all ways. We're predominantly a physical theater ensemble. And so how could we bring some of our aesthetic to audio recording, a singular digital recording that was not with a live audience, but that could still feel like live performance. So one of the ways that we were able to really do that is bring on an incredible sound design team. So it wasn't about like creating a radio play and sound that really felt grounded in physical acts, but really trying to score it and compose it as we would a devised piece. So we had a huge design team come on board, and we used all the sound created by one singular artist, Maria Chavez. She's from Lima, Peru, and she's really well known in the art world. And so part of our practice is really about trying to bring artists from all other genres who can inform us in the theater into their own practice. So she's really famous in that art scene, and she had all this kind of sound, found sound, created sound. She's also a DJ, so that aesthetic. And we had another sound designer come in, take her work and apply it to each of the 25 pieces. And so they all live on their own, and yet all live under this idea of stories around risk and resilience. So the project, unfortunately, wasn't super we haven't figured out how to market it in the right way. But it was an incredible experience to try to apply theatrical principles to a whole new genre. And there was so much learning from that. Hopefully we'll be able to share out really focused learnings from that. But the best thing I can say is it took our practice of developing stories and pieces from a devised perspective with people individually in a large group, edited, and then working with sound in a live way for a later digital application. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. That's it, Claudia, unless you have a follow-up question.
That was great. So again, full transparency, because there are a large number of voices and I want to try and glean as much from the different types of practices. I'm trying to give everybody like 5 minutes to give us a quick masterclass in what they just did. And then I'd love to, if we have time, maybe have a little dialogue about some of the places where we have some bigger questions around audience engagement in a digital format. What are some of the platforms that we really prefer? What are some of the platforms that we're anticipating or wanting to experiment with? I queued up the last 3 speakers because I was being awesome, but then I got nerdy and started helping with the notes. So do we have another person who could share from their practice? I'm asking someone to call on themselves. Ian, yes, please. The microphone is yours.
Thanks, and I've got a timer running in front of me too. This is interestingly I felt prepared for some of this change because I've been working for most of my career in issues of sustainability in theater. So we've been talking about distance participation in events for a while to reduce things like carbon footprints. And so I want to highlight a few things, and I might talk a little bit fast, but I will put them all in the notes immediately following my allotted time as well. And so this is something where we've been trying to solve complicated problems like this since there was a conference that was a partnership between the Minnesota Theater Alliance and TCG in 2012 on sustainability, and we were able to get into the early version of Google Hangouts on Air, which has been shuttered. So It's not a platform that you can use anymore. They got rid of it last summer. But in the meantime, there's been a lot of work on both the sustainability side and then with my company Toaster Lab, which has partnered with Rulan quite a bit over the last few years on looking at various types of platforming and different ways of engaging with performance content. On the sustainability side and more generally some things that are working right now, we're working with the National Arts Center in Ottawa, specifically in the English Theatre Division. We were already developing this project called Green Rooms that was coming out of their cycle on theater and climate change. Where we were looking at a distributed model for convening people together, where we had 8 different sites that we were going to be combining smaller groups together. We're rethinking that, but that's given us a little bit of time to explore with the outward limits of what Zoom can do, but also with some of the interesting features that have been packed into Skype recently with the advent of podcasting and various video platforms. You can now use them for those who are tech savvy. I know there's this couple on the line, as network display interfaces. So you can use an NDI device for each of the streams coming through Skype. And so we've been playing with that in a partnership with the NAC Spiderweb show based here in Canada and the Festival of Live Digital Art and HowlRound as our partner for getting things out as well. And so we've been doing lots of tests on that. So hopefully with an idea that that becomes something that's accessible that we can share. Some of that thinking is based off of work which is not necessarily about digital distribution, but around network creation, around the climate change theater action, which I co-direct with Chantal Bilodeau, which makes the content easy so the content is transportable as opposed to having like the individual performance go around. So that for those who aren't familiar, it commissions 50 playwrights to write short climate change plays, and then we work on the coordination between, now we're cresting towards 250 sites around the world to make those things available for people to use and create that festival out of how it organically comes together. Toaster Lab, sorry, time check. Toaster Lab, which is our company based here, is working, the Canada Council for the Arts has a program called the Digital Strategy Fund. We received a grant from them and are in the middle, right in the middle of a project that we refer to as the Mixed Reality Performance Atelier, where we've been looking at this intersection of emerging mixed reality technologies and performance, which has all of a sudden become much more urgent in the last week. As we know. So we've been looking at, we've been working through that, and before we got that actual grant with Rulan around in-placed work of taking like immersive recordings of work and emplacing them so people can have performance experiences later. So we've been going around with various collaborators with Dancing Earth around the Bay Area into their communities and working on creating VR and other immersive pieces that then get located in a place, and we're in the process of developing the background for that. With that, looking at issues of low bandwidth, how you deliver things in places without data connectivity for both social and technical reasons, that bridges over to work that we're doing with the Kai Theater in Whitehorse, with Swim Pony in Philadelphia around this idea of interoperable storytelling. Like, how do you have someone as an individual move through space to drive performance work? And then just quickly, because I'm running low on my timer here, is that as an instructor at York University, we've been sort of in, I've been doing traditional online teaching for a little bit now, but we've recently been doing, in the devised theater class that I teach a 4th year upper level, we've been doing workshops over the last year with the Dance Exchange as an experiment through Zoom, and have some work around developing like what sort of equipment is useful for people to use when you're trying to move away from the laptop limitations. And that's my time. That's 5 minutes. I'll put the rest, I'll note all of this into the doc.
Brilliant, thank you. I really appreciate everyone self-managing, although I'm not, I'm never gonna cut you off and be like, that's exactly 5 minutes. This is all just about sharing and consenting to the time that we have together, given the fact that we all have like 9 more video conferences today. But that was incredibly useful. Thank you so much for dropping links into the Google Doc, which I think we have now shared successfully to everyone. I'm just gonna name some transparent pieces of some of this practice as it's happening. So you will find often when you are participating digitally with folks, your digital space is inaccessible because of permissions. So you have to remember, how am I sharing the link? Am I sharing the link in a way that's view only? Am I sharing the link in a way that's allowing people to edit? Do I actually want to have a document where anybody can just drop language in? Or do I actually want to have that process controlled by a couple of folks? These are all decisions we get to make. I tend to be like, everybody take notes at the same time. Let's do this all together. So thank you, colleagues, for allowing that particular process to take place. And thank you, everyone, for dropping your links in. We are doing our best. Could everybody just give like maybe like deaf hand claps for Kholoud, who is just doing a magnificent job on the note taking. I'm witnessing it in real time. It's amazing. But feel free to help her out if you can. All right, who else?
Thank you so much. Just so sorry. A little something on this. I'm getting so interested in listening, and I'm getting a little behind on typing. So feel free to add and edit. And thank you so much.
Who else would like to speak and share a little bit about their practice and what platforms they're using, the projects they're working on? Is that Abel?
Oh, sorry, I was just yawning.
Oh, that was just.
No, I wasn't yawning. I was just stretching. Sorry, I was stretching.
And anybody else would like to share a story of, this is what I'm working on and these are some of the solutions I've come up with? Excellent, thank you. Go right ahead, Teresa.
Can someone unmute Teresa?
I can hear her now.
She's on mute.
Unmute myself. There we go. Hello. Sorry about that. One of the things I was going to include is that I'm like one of these older people who don't have a lot of technical skills. So there you go. Case in point. So one of the things that has struck me for many years prior to this moment in time for us and our community has been this idea that was laid out in, of all things, marketing kind of a workshop, but the idea that as theater companies and as arts producers, that we're actually multimedia companies, and that we kind of set a path. Again, this is from a while ago. We set a path, a digital path, a multimedia path towards that special moment of the live performance when we all get together, that is kind of the apex of a certain engagement that we have. And so I've always thought that was fascinating. We've ended up in a situation where we're actually starting to create that for a production that we're postponing until fall, hopefully. That's our anticipation. In that it is a piece of Coast Salish origin stories that have been adapted for this moment and kind of into the future. So imagining what a future would be like with if power were returned to Native in Indigenous control. So it's really lovely, very fun, very family-friendly, beautiful piece created by Roger Fernandez and Fern Renville. So that piece we had to kind of shut down and look for a time in the future to do that. And in the meantime, I just wanted to share that it has turned into this really interesting kind of laying out of for instance, they've gone online and been telling the Native stories, a lot of Native stories, for kind of partly to fill the needs academically right now when schools sort of shut down. We were one of the first to do that. So they're telling the narrative stories, and then the library has gotten involved in giving us a reading list. So what has happened is that their play is about a reimagining of these original origin stories. And so we have actually many months where we can build a literacy with people around these origin stories and then present this piece, which is actually a futuristic imagining on in a live performance. Now, how we use that, one of the things that we were going to do with that piece is that we were going to do very flexible seating. And so that it was going to be where people could pick whether they were going to be in like pillows or sofas or chairs or what other kinds of seating they needed, or in a lot of places flexibility for wheelchair seating. But And so one of the things we were thinking of is how we would be able to naturally integrate in some kind of the social distancing that now we have into that setting. And so now we're trying to think what would be another way we could present this just on multiple platforms as it's developing and as it's creating. So they're developing what is it? See, I'm an old person. It's not a comic book, but you all know what it is.
Graphic novel.
There you go, graphic novel. Again, based on the stories around that. So I just wanted to share that was one thing that's going on. I'm also really, really interested in anyone who's using this to reach disabled audiences and artists and getting disabled artists involved. I'm noticing a lot of wonderful dance online, and I'd love to see different bodies in that dance that I'm seeing online. I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to do a quick shout out. Well, first I should ask, is there anyone from the Unsettling Dramaturgy cohort on the call right now who could speak to that practice? All right. I'm just going to talk real fast then. So the Unsettling Dramaturgy cohort is a group of Crip and Indigenous dramaturgs that have been meeting online for the last, for almost a year now, actually. It's actually organized out of, I want to say, it's somewhere in Canada, but you have a very large country. So I feel like it's West Coast Canada,
yeah,
like
it's
organizing all that. This cohort is going to be holding two, again, I think similar to this peer learning digital exchange labs, specifically on best practices for accessibility in creating and managing your digital exchanges in these spaces. So excited about that. Those are coming up. Don't remember the dates off the top of my head, but I feel confident they will be shared on the Facebook page for Unsettling Dramaturgy, which I will find and drop in our notes, the link to that. But yeah, big shout out to all of our disabled community that have already been using these practices of collaborating remotely. Big shout out to all of our colleagues who have already been working across nations and across distance and have been using a lot of these tools to develop work. I've got stories I can share, but I still want to make sure that we're giving enough space to other voices. Do we have somebody else who has a story of, this is what I'm working on, this is the technology I use, this is how it's been successful so far? If not, I can start sharing some stories from my end. Seeing thumbs up. I believe those thumbs up are Claudia talk. So I'm going to tell a story, but then again, I see other folks on here. I want to hear from you. Or we can have a conversation on a topic that is useful to you. So 2 years ago, I traveled to Portland, Oregon, where I collaborated with Profile Theater and Ping Chong Company, doing a collaboration with disabled community members. So they weren't even folks who led with an arts practice. They were just folks who had bodies like mine, or bodies that are going through degenerative disease and losing their capabilities. And the project was specifically around caregivers and disabled folk. And in one of our earliest conversations, we had the conversation about how we were working with a population where we were all successfully able to get into a room and do our first writing session. But then the question was, how do you create a development plan that allows for asynchronous participation? If you have participants who have variable ability to get to the space physically, it's useful to have a digital workspace. So then we ended having the conversation of, oh, what's the digital workspace we're going to use? Is it going to be, oh, we have a shared Google Drive that we all just, or Google document that we all just write in, and that's how we do this? Do we need to level it up and have a base camp or a sauna, something that allows us to share different files or have people write, offer some piece of writing and then have something where people can do comments afterwards? So we had a conversation about, should we use Slack to do it? And the biggest piece of that conversation was we were working with a population where only 50% of us felt comfortable with any of the digital tools. So just as when you're producing in a physical space and you're dealing with a population that's never been to your theater, you have to give people like directions on how to get to your theater. You might even have to plan some extra time to help folks. You might even want to do a site visit, right? Where it's like, oh, we're going to schedule 30 minutes just to play with the technology with no performance outcomes. The only job is for us to get comfortable with it. So it's those kinds of things when you're working with populations that who don't play online all the time anyway. So that was a story about developing work with disabled populations and older populations in the last couple of years. Stories from my colleagues, platforms they'd like to talk about? Excellent. I'm going to tell another story then. So I'm thinking specifically also about how are we taking advantage of this moment. So the act of sharing things online, this is different than experiencing things in meet space, in the IRL space. There are things that we cannot do digitally, magical exchanges that happen between two bodies breathing together next to each other. But there are things that are possible in a digital frame that are impossible in real life. For instance, I'm recording this conversation and we're going to be able to share it with a larger population. That's super exciting. So I'm also realizing for some reason, Teresa's, I look forward to figuring out if I'm just going to make myself the spotlight video because like for some reason it wasn't showing me. That's the other fun part of using Zoom. It's automatically deciding who to feature. So hopefully it's now, you can all see my face instead of just Teresa's name. So some more things to be thinking about. I would love to open this up to a larger conversation about some of the ways, oh gosh, and we're almost out of time. We have like 15 minutes, good grief. So hello, my colleagues, well done. 15 minutes to go before we end this conversation formally. I'd love to open it up to maybe some dialogue or some questions. And these might be questions that we don't have answers to yet. You know, for instance, how do you create the circumstances for your audience to really feel like they're participating? Like we heard from Toronto Poetry Slam. Or, how do we collaborate in terms of using fiber arts? And how do you practice sewing online? How do we do these other exchanges online? So I'm just gonna open it up, let folks talk. Yes, I see someone raising their hand. Yes, Alyssa, please.
I know better. Oy. Okay, so this hasn't been brought up yet, but money, how to monetize these things. Because generally speaking, yeah, I think that's the thing we're all going to be struggling with. So on the first time that we had it, we were just like, let's see if this works, you know, like throw caution to the wind, let's try. And then we just mentioned a couple of times, if you'd like to, you know, donate, you can, in Canada, you can e-transfer. You just send in, you know, go to your bank account, post the email, and then you can just like, boom, here's the money. So the first time we ended up with $41. And that was one person gave $20 and 3 other people gave $7. This time it seems like 20 people contributed, but we needed 65 people to give their regular $7 for us to make up what we actually spent. So I think that's a big consideration. This time we also opened up PayPal. But yeah, how are people not losing money and possibly earning money? Otherwise, like, we're all just going to be deeper in the hole than we were, as long as we are paying, you know, performers and that kind of thing.
I have an offering, which is not a direct response to Alyssa's question, but I think it does link to what Erin's offered in the chat and what Claudia has just said. Here it is. I'm wondering about how we, Claudia, you mentioned this, intentionally use this time to try to bring people into a comfort zone of using these technologies. And I think that, was it Teresa had mentioned about using online platforms to build up to an in-person event? So I think some of us may have some capacity with going live on Twitter, going live on Instagram. And those two platforms can do things that Zoom can't, or do things differently. So I think there is a need for like an infographic or something that kind of catalogs for beginners what the chat capabilities are, what the video looks like, what that might mean in terms of potential for interaction, and who can join when and how. I think in our space we had just enough knowledge of what Zoom could do that we thought it might work, and it worked kind of spectacularly. And now I'm learning pro tips. So even if you want only one thing that you might learn that's very tangible from being on Zoom for this long today, if you have it on your computer, which it's different than having it on your phone, if you have it in full screen, you can unmute yourself quickly. If you have it on your full screen and you want to even say hi to me now, push the space bar and then say hi, and you'll see that you can hear your voice.
Hi.
Hi.
And
Hi.
Go ahead, Ian.
I was gonna say,
You have to
depending
hold
on
the space bar.
yeah, you have to hold it. Depending on when you installed Zoom and what version you have, it was like last week that you had to actually change it as a setting. So if somebody does not know where it is, if you go into your preferences, the third item down is audio, and then the last toggle box is press and hold space key to temporarily unmute yourself.
Right, I see it. I could send it maybe a
All right.
screenshot.
I'm just going to have a real nerdy moment. Ian, would you please share with us how you make awesome backgrounds happen on Zoom?
Yes.
So also,
folks are going to want to do.
So also in your settings, the fourth item down in the settings, once you have that, is virtual background. That's space on. I always use that feature. You can, so there's usually, and it depends on which version you have, there are a variety of preloaded ones, like, and then you can also, there's a little plus button so you can add whatever you want. So as I've been going through to entertain myself, the other day I did this, which was the Zoom meeting I was in at the moment. It was a little meta performance of my own, but I've mainly been using like things from shows or projects that I enjoy just to entertain myself, because not that there's anything, I have a wall and a banner behind me, but I just, yeah, like to mix it up.
All right, Teresa's about to speak. Before Teresa speaks, I'm just going to do a shout out to Erin's question, which was a really good one. So I'm going to say it out loud because it was shared in the chat. And my practice is when I'm doing these peer exchange learning things, I tend to read aloud what's shared in the chat in real time if we're creating a digital archive for other people to experience, since they will not be able to witness the chat. So the question was, I'm getting stuck wondering what the various capabilities of different platforms are so that they know what all is possible. How do I compare all platforms, knowing what I can afford at best one of them, or knowing I can afford at best one of them? One of the responses from our Toronto community was, well, we played with what we had, and then we discovered what we had. We're actually in an amazing moment. So for the past 2 years, I've been doing on my own these tiny little experiments, and they're painfully expensive, complicated to put together, but I've been playing with all the different platforms. So I figured out what works best for my practice. But your practice, what you're trying to develop, and what the community that you're trying to connect to, that's actually all different. So it could be that for your community, using the most accessible and cheap and free platforms is the way to go. It's like, yeah, we could do some fancy stuff through Zoom, but my community is actually going to be able to access this better in just a straight Facebook or Instagram live fashion. Bet. So I do think that this is going to be a moment of experimenting with what you have, and also witnessing what everybody else is doing. When folks are doing something, I'm going to be trying to encourage people to share your stuff in this Transmedia Facebook group at the very least, so that we have a place to keep going to go, this is the platform somebody just used. Somebody used Chromecast to share this conversation with their family. I think it would work great with my creative practice in A, B, and C. So I do think that we're going to be experimenting and witnessing a lot, but I also think this is also going to be a moment where we need to be having conversations with our colleagues and finding out what cohorts want to collaborate to do shared costs, to buy into a platform together. I have a Zoom account. Does it make sense for everyone I know to get their own Zoom account, or should I just level up and add you to mine? I don't know the answer to that, but I do think that's going to be a conversation folks are having. Teresa, handing the microphone to you, and keep dropping stuff in the chats and also in the Google documents.
I just wanted to comment on the question about monetizing. I don't have an answer for that, but I have a big picture view, which is that our theater company for the last 2 years has been using a radical hospitality model. So there's been, so that anybody could purchase the exact same ticket for $5, $25, $50, or $75. And it has so there's been an element of choice and of agency in terms of how they felt like they could afford to access the performances. And so I think if we were to go onto an online, we would basically just say it's the same kind of thing. We're going to present this piece, we're going to do this, and these are the 4 models, and we encourage you to consider those based on your capacity and what you can do. And the only other quick thing I want to add is I'm also very curious about this platform in terms of working with deaf artists. I'm still not sure if that is the most, but I'd love to hear from you, Claudia, or anyone else who's had that experience. And then the final thing is that I think we may actually find that in terms of the value and the monetary value, the more communities we reach who don't usually get included are going to value this in a way that may reinforce some of those exact issues. The thing is, as long as we're appealing to people that are used to a very different model and a very standard kind of pay for a product model, it's not going to necessarily be. But if you were to say open this up for deaf artists, there's going to be some people stepping up and coming forward and valuing it tremendously.
Rachel, I see your hand up. I'm hoping you're going to drop some science about collaborating with deaf community online, but anything else you want to say, please say as well.
Well, thank you. So this is Rachel Grossman. Teresa, I'm curious, I want to just address your question. So Dog and Pony DC is a mixed deaf and hearing ensemble. And so I've worked through Zoom on devising with work with hearing and deaf ensembles, and then was also part of the deaf theater action planning session through HowlRound, which spent almost 18 months planning entirely through Zoom meetings. And I was the only hearing member of the non-HowlRound staff folks producing team. The entire team was the producing team, but it was I was the hearing member of that, and then we had interpreters come in, and then we had the hearing staff from HowlRound. So do you have a specific question about? Is it collaborating with deaf artists, or?
I'm gonna interrupt only because we only have 5 minutes. And while I would love to have a rich, juicy exchange around that, I would love to encourage you as individual, amazing human beings to maybe connect in the Facebook to do some more dynamic, specific exchange. But I will say out loud that the Unsettling Dramaturgy cohort is specifically holding a session in the next week or so that's going to be touching on doing land acknowledgements in a digital multiple space fashion, as well as best practices for inclusive collaboration online. And in a nutshell, a lot of us use Zoom because it allows for a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and Claudia, I guess I can just support that to say, like, I missed because I was in services on Friday night, but like a deaf ASL improv slam that was all over Zoom, and then I saw an ASL storytelling event because I was in a Zoom game night on Saturday night. So like, I think it's about obviously I can connect with you. I'll email you I'll send you my email in the chat. I can tell you about my experiences as a hearing person and a coordinator working with my deaf colleagues, but you would need to talk to folks who are deaf or ASL users about their experiences and their preferences. But there's like a bevy of ways to work both cross-culturally between folks who are deaf, folks who are hearing, folks who are hard of hearing, folks who require or not require, excuse me, like prefer ASL interpretation versus captions. The captioning is the biggest like wah part of.
That's my question.
Yeah. And so you and I can talk about that. It's possible. You just need the free option as someone is literally live captioning and during the conversation. And it's one person unless Zoom has changed since the last time I've done it. So it has to be assigned to one person. But again, I haven't done that in over a year and a half.
Well, my colleagues, I want to release you into the rest of your full lives all over the country, all over the continent. Just thank you so deeply for coming. And we will definitely be dropping as many details as possible into this Google Doc. I will be sharing a link to this Google Doc to the Facebook. And this conversation ended up being a lot about platforms and logistics and sharing where we are in real time. We will be calling up Justice, will be convening more of these developmental digital spaces for us to have some more conversations and exchanges around best practices in terms of audience development. One of the things I gotta say is it's transitioning your in real life audience to a digital audience. That's going to take some work. It's going to take more communication in digital platforms. Also, frankly, according to my research, we need to understand that this is the new reality, possibly for the next 2 years. So even as we are practicing social distance in a mandated form in ways that are helping to keep us safer, to flatten the curve, there are going to be moments, maybe 3-4 months from now, 6 months from now, where there's a local spike. And that community is asked to, in a very quick turnaround fashion, to put themselves into social distancing again. The epidemiologists that I've been listening to in all my nerdy podcasts are saying to plan for this to be the new reality. So I'm encouraging all of my colleagues, do not stop producing work that is for the magical exchanges we have in shared physical space. But I do think that we need to be thinking strategically and in smart ways about creating additional pieces of that performance so that in a fast fashion, if it needs to be exclusively a digital exchange, it can be. Also, frankly, I'm just excited that I get to see so many shows. I got to participate. I got to watch the Toronto Poetry Slam. That's amazing. Colleagues, thank you so much for joining. Any final remarks before we sign off? I have a hand up from Alyssa.
We do a group photo.
Group photo. We definitely need to do a group photo.
So anybody who wants to turn on your video, and I'll screen grab it, and then I'll try to share it to the Google Doc. And if that doesn't work, I'll share it to Claudia and then the Facebook and whatever, and we'll find a way. I just feel like this is amazing, and so we may as well capture it. I'll just give it another minute. Hey everyone. There are some more people that aren't on, so I'll give you like 5 more seconds, and then if you haven't, maybe it's because you don't want to, and that's okay. All right, that seems like, oh, somebody else just popped in. All right, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'll do one more, because, 1, 2, 3. Thanks. Okay. You guys have other comments, go for it.
Thank you. That's delightful, and thank you for capturing that visually for us. That's amazing. One of the practices I didn't do was a visual description. I'm still working on my own access, so apologies for not doing visual descriptions during this entire session. Thank you so much for joining. Please feel free to email me privately if you're like, I didn't get to talk about this. We need to talk about that. Like I said, we're going to gather again. But in the meantime, please wash your hands, don't touch your face, and be safe wherever you are in the world.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thanks, Claudia. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kholoud. Thank you, Kholoud Sawaf. Thank you so much. I'm just watching all of the people disappear. I don't
Claudia.
need to. It's just fun for me.
I'm going to send you an email, Claudia. I just wanted to say that I didn't get a chance to say, like, I think there's so much foundational work to do. And then I think there's and so clearly we got kind of sidetracked by the excitement and momentum of that. But I also think that I heard in your initial call that there is a possibility for like dreaming big picture if you have just enough familiarity with all the platforms. So I thought we might be able to do some of that in this call, and I see you, that you have the potential for doing that, dreaming, that visioning, that full integration. And yeah, and I'm curious about where and how and when and who will be involved in that. And I'm really grateful for all the disability justice advocates who've helped to make these moments slightly more seamless and slightly more humane in a crisis, so I'm totally there for that conversation in whatever ways I can be. So I'll send you a little email just noting that.
That makes me so happy, because yeah, I'm really excited for the let's just blue sky this and have the like what's possible, let's creatively possible conversation.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was hungry to do today, but I still think that what we had today was a very useful and beautiful exchange. So I'm glad we did it. But we're doing this again. We're doing this.
Agreed.
And I will be at the next Toronto Poetry Slam, because
all right.
Just shout out for the host. The host did such a good job, MC. Like, you did a great job.
Yeah, right. I'll be your host next time, so you can give me any feedback you have about my working on the seamless integration. But thank you for being there. Bye.
See you cooking. Good to see you. Bye, everyone. I'm turning it off now. Goodbye.
Yeah. Bye.